Hello everybody. So I know I have not made a video in a very long time, and that's because honestly I have really struggled with the transition from Rhino 5 to Rhino 6. Rhino 6 added a bunch of quality of life features that felt really good and made Rhino 5 feel really bad. And then they took away things that we had in Rhino 5, which made Rhino 6 feel really bad. So I've just been in this awful world of copying and pasting between the two, just feeling absolutely miserable working every day. Now, the Rhino 7 WIP, it's pretty stable, and some of my feature requests going back to the Rhino 6 days are being added. I'm taking time at Christmas to show it to you because this is such a huge time saver. We all know when we have to do a symmetrical edit on a curve, you have to click the symmetric points and then edit them all kinds of weird ways. This is radial symmetry, where we want to take this flower petal and give one of them kind of a sharper edge. And God forbid you have to insert a control point because you need more detail right here. Doing a ribbed texture on a ring, you set this up, you mirror it, you do a linear array, and then you convert that with CurveThroughPolyline into a smooth curve. Well, if you got one thing wrong, and you didn't like the height of this or the width of the channel, you would have to delete everything, go back to here, change it, and then do that all over again. No more. Now you can use these three control points to control an infinite number of points that you've set up with history in some way. Polar array, mirror, array linear, and this is what it looks like. So I took and made this little polyline. I did a polar array on it, lined up the endpoints, called CurveThroughPolyline, and now I have a single curve that I can just edit this little portion right here, and everything else updates. So I'm going to show you a universal shank, and I'll make a ring and then editing it in just a second. Before I start, I need to cover a couple of things. So I now work with lock children yes, update children yes, always record history. And this color swatch, which came from here, has been, I'm pretty much using this as is, but my layer colors, so shank is 25500, and the curves, the parent curves of the shank are 255, 127, 127. That lines up with this, and it lines up with this. So your one-click select that you have in Matrix, if you miss that, that's what this is. Also, because I'm working with locked children, yes, I can't just grab this curve and move it anymore. I need to break history on it. Now, Rhino does have a history purge, but don't ever use that because it deletes the history tree and you can't undo it. I made this little macro that turns history lock no, moves it up one, down one, and turns history back on. That's the yes part. The right click is the no part, which will leave history off. Same thing with the delete yes and delete no. History lock no, invert, delete is this side. It does an invert, but they turn lock back on afterwards, and the no leaves lock off. So right now, these are all history enabled, and if we look at it from the left side, actually I'll go into split screen for this. Watch these as I click over here. Grab this one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So those are the 7 curves that control this whole shank. So I can grab the first one, turn the points on, and I can take this from a 2mm shank to a 3 by saying 0.5. And now it's 3 millimeters wide. This is a 0.4 millimeter radius at the bottom. You know, if you want this to be more of a gentle curve, you can adjust the softness of it, and that will update the shank. So this should be a 3 millimeter shank now, and if we go to box edit, that is 3 millimeters. Also, this is a copy of this, this is a copy of this, so at any point I can break history in the chain by saying break history, and now when I edit this one, no, up, go up, only those So you can change the profile as you go around the ring, because you usually start, you know, with a taper and then it needs to expand out, or you start with a soft top and you need to, let me grab 5 again, turn control points on. We want to make these all the same Z. You know, when you get to your setting stones, you need it to have kind of a sharp edge on top. And the closer we bring these control points together, you know, that's going to give us a sharp edge. If I'm going to undo this back to the beginning. If this is too many control points, make sure we're on 1. Oh, and because of the way I did that, 5 is still locked because I did not call history purge. That's an important thing to do. So turn the points back on for this. If I need to make this a sharp crease in the middle, you know, I can put a ridge in the top of it. It's a universal shank. It will do whatever you want in a straight line. Also, if it has too much detail, you can take and delete that point, and that will remove an ISO curve out of the, so let me undo that. Points on, grab that point, delete it. That will take out detail. If you need extra detail, insert control point. Make sure we're on 1, and then I can add right there and make this, you know, even a sharper corner. So if we wanted this to have like if we want this to have kind of a chamfered edge, you know, we can bring those 2 control points together. And if that's not hard enough, we can insert control point on 1, pop 1 there, pop 1 there, and we can get an even crisper. So that's the beauty of having all of this history. And the command that's doing all this is MergeCrv. So we mirrored this around to this side, and then we took sub-object select and this one, and we called MergeCrv, and we got this, it's down here on this superfluous layer. We got, oh, it's still locked. We got these guys out of MergeCrv, and then we put those into curve through Polyline, which is located right here. Curve control points through Polyline. And then we took and lofted this loose so that our curve control points match perfectly with our shank control points. Okay, I'm gonna make a ring that I actually have to make for a customer, and then I'll show you how easy it is to edit. I'm gonna pause right here just to show you this. I've got rigid yes and rigid groups no. This takes it back to the Rhino 5 behavior, where you could take all of these things that we want to flow along rigidly, but instead of doing the Rhino 6 behavior, where rigid groups was a thing, and it all showing up as 1, and then we can't use groups. Now we can take and do rigid groups no, and they're going to flow along as individual objects. Okay, back to the speed through. Okay, now this ring is done. At this point, I would save it. I got my little sprue down here ready to go. This is a little 3D print support plus a casting sprue all in one. I would save it, take all of this, not my sprue, delete it, and then move this down and do the Boolean. But I'm going to show you guys how quick it is to edit it. So I'm going to bring in a different size finger rail, put that in, and I'm going to turn off all of my geometry and cutters so I can see what's going on, and the gems. And you can see that I've got this white curve that just pasted in. That is a, my white layer is my reference, so I always keep it locked. You know, that's my 10 o'clock. If we're looking at this like a watch face, from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, that's where I want my stones to flow. Also, that is my finger rail, size 7. Lock that back. Grab everything. Scale 2D. From 0, lock it on the Z. Go from our 5.5 to a 7. And now when we look at everything, turn our geometry back on, turn our cutters back on, turn our gems back on. We still have a 2mm by 2mm shank. Well, we changed it to 2.2 for the 1.9mm stones. But we were able to resize it. Now we can save it and do the booleans again. But they decided they don't want 1.9mm stones, they want 1.3. So we'll grab our master stone, scale, and say 1.3 divided by 1.9. And now our master stone is a 1.3. All the other stones are 1.3s. We can grab our curve that controls the distance, turn points on, and look for our spacing curve, which is right there. You can turn the shank off if you can't see what's going on. All right, so there's our spacing curve. This is a 0.25mm offset. So we're gonna grab this and, wrong way. We're gonna make this so that, get in there. A little too much, there we go. I mean, that's, you're getting nitpicky worrying about that. But that's a, like if we measure this distance from girdle to girdle, should be right there at 0.25. Okay, so we updated the spacing. Let's turn our, oh, I turned my layer 0 off to show you guys and I lost 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. I'm going to isolate this. Did I do it? Isolate that. Okay, now 2 o'clock is right in here. Let's just say this is where we want our stones. I'm going to ungroup that. I'm going to take those guys and put that back in with this group. Hide it. Take these and do mirror X. Okay. Unisolate. Show our shank again. Okay, so now we've switched it to a size 7. We've changed the stones from a 1.9 to a 1.3. Now we just need to update our shank. I'm just going to grab all of these guys and turn their points on. And we just want these. So we're at 2.2. We need to go to 1.3 with a 0.15mm offset so our stones don't overhang. 2.2 minus 1.6, that is 0.6. Half of that is 0.3, so negative 0.3 will give us a shank that is 1.6mm wide. For some of you, that is going to be too narrow, and that is for me, so I'm going to add 0.1 to it just so that we're 1.8 wide. If that's too much for you, you can take off, you know, a tenth. Whatever you want it to be, okay? And then where our transition is, looks like we are a little farther back than we were last time. So we're going to take and scale this out just a little bit more. And if that transition happens too quick for you, you can grab this one, break history, pull it back a little bit, and then you'll get a more fluid blend into having the sharp corners that the setter will cut prongs out of. Now we just need to update our centerline cutter. So I'm going to take and hide that, and isolate that. So now I can turn back on shaded mode. I also might like to see one of these guys so that when I'm Control Shift selecting these curves and I'm going to scale 2D, the reason I want to see that one is I don't want, I mean, this fishtail cutter and the centerline cutter need to be the same depth. But I don't want them exactly the same depth because when I go to do the booleans, that would create a coincidental point that would cause the booleans to fail. So I'm going to take and just make it just a little bit lower than it. And we need to move that over a little bit. Take and drag that a little bit more. And now that's lining up with our last prong cutter. Unlock all. Okay, again, this is where I would save it. So now we can do the booleans. So I'm just going to turn everything on and delete all of that. Lock off. Take and move all this -30. You guys too. Grab our shank we call join. We grab our centerline cutter, join, take all of our blocks and explode them into individual objects. Then we can do our booleans real quick and select everything under our gem cutters. Select sublayer objects. All the booleans are done. There's the gems. Our center sprue. If we look at it with the right mode, we want to move it from this point down to here, and then we've got a 3mm sprue. Join that up. Oh, we're going to sub-object select the face and scale that in to match the shank. That's it, we're done. Turn off the gems here and let you see the ring. We just turned that size 5.5 with 1.9mm stones into a size 7 with 1.3s. It's, if I'm not talking and worrying about everything else, it's about a 3-minute job. Making this ring in the first place is about a 15-minute job. And this shank I've used on every ring I've made in the past 2 days. There's another version of the shank that I've been working on that is a sweep instead of a loft. The beauty of this one, I'm going to lock my history and turn off superfluous again. So the beauty of this one is that you have top and bottom curves. There's no symmetry. They're joined together with a blend that's on this. This history channel has a blend going between them. So you can take and move this over, and now the surface goes over and it blends over to there, and it's a sweep. I will post all of this on the McNeil forum. If you want to see me make some of these template files, like my R7 diamond layout, this works perfect for stones in a straight line. If they're not in a straight line or if they're tapered, I use, some of you may remember Array Curve Plus. It's, you know, Jarek incorporated that in with the other paneling tool. It's now Armadillo. So if there's any size taper or any curve, I just use Armadillo. Rhino does not have the tools to do this. It is very frustrating to try and do just in Rhino. And Jarek's tool is awesome, except that there's no history on it. So that kind of sucks as well, because if you're doing form finding and you're trying to find what size stones fit, as soon as you exit out of this command, it creates the objects. No history. Got to go back through and parameterize it all over again. It's a pain in the ass. And that's why I really like the history workflows. And I've got more feature requests in Rhino to get that as part of the base, where you can have a flow and feed it a normal so that you can do a array curve plus armadillo style with history in Rhino, and hopefully we'll get that soon. All right, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments, questions, I'll post a link over to a thread on the McNeil forum that you can follow up on. I'll also have my template files up there for you guys to download as well.